Hi all, our notable game today is from the London Chess Classic, round 7, a fantastic round, lots of decisive games. Vishy Anand in this game was playing against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, 2765, Vishy Anand 2803. E4, we see a fighting Sicilian defence, so Maxime Vachier-Lagrave entering the Najdorf variation with a6 characterising the Najdorf, and we see bishop e2 here, not h3, which Vishy has played, of course, recently. We have e5, knight b3, bishop e7, a well-trodden path here. Quite often just castling is played though. Bishop e3, delaying castling a little bit. Bishop e6, and in this position, White played knight d5, and you'll see that e4 pawn, it seems to be loose, but of course there's a penalty here, or rather, if you haven't seen this before, I'll just quickly show you. If knight takes e4, bishop b6 is pretty nasty, and then if the queen moves somewhere, knight c7 check, we're going to win the rook. So yes, that will be a big penalty for taking that pawn on e4 here after knight d5. Instead, knight bd7 covering the b6 square, and here queen d3 is the main move, actually protecting the e pawn. Now here black castled, we see c4, so white's kind of set up a bind, a seemingly strong bind on the d5 square, able to take with the c pawn, could be useful sometimes. Black now energetically tries to undermine this bind with b5, trying to put pressure back on e4. If luring the queen away, black could potentially take on e4. White just supports the c4 pawn, but now knight c5 gaining a tempo on the queen, and white took this off, so giving up the dark square bishop, which of course weakens a little bit these squares, which could be useful tactically for black in the future. Subtly, white is weaker on the dark squares potentially, especially if this can run rampant later. But at the moment, the bishop on e7 doesn't seem to be doing a great deal. We see b3, so white seems to have a very solid, controlled position. White seems to be controlling anything going on here at the moment. Black takes on d5, c takes, and his idea now is knight e8 to blockade quite quickly this d pawn, so it's not a danger. We see castles, knight d6, and now white attacks black's pawns on the queen side. If white can prompt b4, then white will get that lovely c4 square. Now here's some very energetic play from black, starting with bishop g5. So the idea of this is to be able to take on d2 and then take on e4. So it doesn't matter, it seems, about b5 at the moment. It's protected anyway by the knight. We see knight f3 parrying that idea of taking, and now the bishop, remarkably, you might think this is a little bit odd, plays actually to f4 here. The reason you might think this is odd is, although it's supporting the e5 pawn, you might think g3 is possible here. This wasn't played actually. If g3, black has an important resource in this position just in time in the form of f5. This could be annoying, putting pressure on that e4. The pawn as a protected by the queen is a little bit vulnerable here tactically. Black really is getting some fun in this position, it seems. So white for the moment is not tempted to play g3. Vishy Anand plays a takes, and here we get the move f5 in any case, trying to push through this e4 to fork the queen and the knight. So a sharp position is resulting. The knight goes back now to d2. What is going on here? And now we see queen g5 hitting the knight again, and also the queen is well placed for queen h6 to directly threaten a mate in one. Things have really taken a violent turn here after the c takes b. We see rook ad1, and now black finally recaptures, so he's played quite a few in between moves there, and now getting this position. And black has accomplished actually a rook on the a file, which can infiltrate at either a3 or a2. We see the move e takes f5, which potentially gives white a juicy e4 square, or at least to get rid of this blockading knight. Black now plays a remarkable move in this position. Can you guess what black played here? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now, you might want to pause the video. My clue is it's a fantastic game of in-between moves instead of the ordinary recaptures. So it might not be a recapture on f5. Instead, 5 seconds to pause the video. Rook a3, yes, it threatens c4, rook a3 pinning the b3 pawn. And now after knight e4, challenging and forking the queen and knight, an energetic response, making use of the rook on a3 here. c4, yes, black seemingly is not being dictated to by Vishy Anand. He's threatening white. And maybe this is the point where, in this position, the queen should have perhaps gone to f3. The queen going to f3, this can lead to some sharp variations. For example, rook takes b3, knight takes, rook takes, knight takes is winning for white. So that's no good for black. But queen h6 is critical here. And if white defends with g3, rook takes b3, the queen can go to g2 here. And this kind of variation is ultra sharp, but should be okay for white. So queen f3 seems to be a good move, but also queen b1 is interesting, where the queen, you'll note, is protected here. Keeping pieces protected is important. There's a sharp line here with bishop takes, check, taking here. And in this line, it's ultra sharp. Black was actually threatening rook h6 there. d6, it seems white can hold the balance here about equal, just about. White's holding the balance. So, but in the game after c4, in fact, Vishy Anand played queen c2, and you'll notice queen c2, it's an unprotected queen. That can be important tactically, unprotected pieces, very important tactically. And we see, in fact, queen takes f5. The knight is now pinned to that unprotected queen. So queen b2, and although now the unpinning has meant knight takes d6 is possible, as well as queen takes a3, there's 2 threats to deal with. Sharp position. And this actually attacks the queen, but black nevertheless takes on b3. Okay, well, one thing to rule out here is knight takes d6. Black in this position can play bishop takes h2 check, and if he gets a check in, he's just going to win the queen. And if king h1, then queen f4, and it's really bad for white, this position. Although he's temporarily a piece up, if the queen moves, queen h4 with the killer threat of bishop h2 and queen h2 mating, will be eventually like mating white. So that's far too dangerous, this position. So this is an ultra sharp position here, and Vishy decides here the best thing is just to give up his queen. He plays queen takes b3. He's getting a rook and he's getting a knight. Is that enough? A rook and a knight. Remember, he's got this potentially dangerous d pawn as well. Queen g6 hitting the knight, and also queen h6 will be useful. Knight takes b5. So d6 would seem to be on the cards. So black has to be very energetic here. It's dangerous for both sides. Black plays e4 with the idea of e3, trying to disrupt white's king safety. We have d6, kind of ignoring that, saying, okay, come and get me. But now actually b2 is played, putting some extra weight on the rooks to be responsible for stopping this pawn. A very sharp position indeed. White in this position plays knight d4, which unprotects. The knight was protecting d6. You might think, hang on, that's a curious decision. Why play that? Let's have a quick check on this position. What would happen if d7, maybe just safely blockading it for the moment, and if here black can maybe just even do that, just ignoring things and keeping the pressure. So it's a dangerous position for white here. d6 cannot be, it doesn't seem to be good. So knight d4 though is played, and it's got some other ideas behind it to coordinate pieces on e6 is one of the main ones. We see queen takes d6 but giving up the d6 pawn, so black is threatening potentially bishop takes h2 now as well. Check, king h8, knight e6, so attacking the queen and the rook. Is white getting more material here? Energetic response is needed now. Bishop takes h2 check, and you might think, what on earth is this? The queen and the rook is attacked. Isn't black just getting munched a bit more here? Is he really getting compensation for this? Here is where an absolutely shocking, brilliant move is played by black, and this is a great position to test your analytical skills, to try and analyze variations. I believe it's a very fun, entertaining position. Black has a major resource, tactical resource, so you might want to pause the video here. I'll give you 5 seconds to pause the video, and you might want to spend quite a few minutes looking at the position and come up with what resource does black have here. So 5 seconds starting from now to pause the video. Okay, black played the shocking rook takes f2. It is a shocking move indeed, but white is overloaded. This pawn plays a major role as well in some of the variations. The first thing to point out here is rook takes d6. Black doesn't want to play the check because let's see this position. There's only really one move here. If taking, then not bishop takes, because then here this is winning for black. That passed pawn is winning, but here actually king takes, and this mate threat is threatened. And if here to take time to avoid the mate, bishop a2, and then white's actually a little bit better there. No, there's actually in this variation after rook takes d6, there's a fantastic move here really. Can you see? 5 seconds. Okay, it's bishop takes d6. Yeah, keeping the exit route closed for the king. And there's nothing for white. If taking, then we queen here. And if here, well, black's just the queen up. And f8 square is prevented from being used. So that's just actually winning for black. So that's a very, very important variation. So after rook takes f2, we see that rook takes d6 is not possible. Rook takes f2, we just do queen takes d1. And on here, check holds the f8 square against the back row mate threat, and here black can actually just queen safely, doesn't mind giving up the spare queen, just be absolutely winning here. So yeah, this tension here, tactical tension, is incredible after rook takes f2. So we've examined rook takes d6, rook takes f2. What else is there for white? Well, very difficult. White plays knight g5, which does carry a venomous, seemingly venomous ideas. But the main one is rook takes, and then the check being threatened. Black reacts here with a fantastic move in response. It's a winning position for black. So another great tactical response in this position, which handles all the threats very elegantly. Can you see what black plays here? Another great position to analyse variations, and a joyful position tactically, really. So if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video starting from now, black to play. Right, black actually has a number of moves here to keep the advantage, but the most incisive, I believe, is actually played by the Super Grandmaster. The engines love it. Bishop g3, absolutely love it. If knight f7 check, we can just snap that off. Look at the staring of these pieces. It's lethal for the white king. You know, if takes, we just take here. And then actually we can mate white in 2 with the check there. So that's absolutely no-go area, knight f7. We just take there on f7. And with taking here, we take here, takes, and takes here. And we're queening that pawn. That's absolutely winning. The bishop isn't in a position to stop b1. So incredibly, yeah, it all works like clockwork for black. This position absolutely works like clockwork. And yeah, here is where Vishy actually had to resign. He actually had to resign after that bishop move. Knight g5, bishop g3 is the final move of the game. What else is there to do here? Yeah, so the combination of the threats around white's king and this pawn is a killer combination. A very, very tactical game indeed. It shows black did have resources on the dark squares and used them expertly to kind of bypass white's threats, to do counter threats, dark square based counter threats. Sometimes you are in a position to ignore the opponent's threats, but you have to use your trump cards of the position to do that effectively. And here black really used his dark square pressure, the king's safety issues and his passed pawn, and the queen, although theoretical, going to d3, it seemed to be a tactical target to this f5. It really did seem to work very well for black. The tactical consequences from the opening, getting the dark square bishop, putting the pressure on the dark square as the center, and the tactics just working wonderfully here. The major mistake seemed to be putting the queen where it was unprotected, which led to this horrendous pin, forcing Vishy to sack his queen for 2 pieces. Although he had a dangerous passed pawn, he didn't get any time to use that dangerous passed pawn. Black made sure he was going for it, basically making sure white wasn't given time to increase or use his trump cards at all. Fantastic explosive tactics to get this crushing position, really, where white is defenseless. If we look at a few other moves, king g1, we can just take here. In this position, check here is lethal. Look at the dark squares. Then we can drive the knight back. And then here, actually, we can play queen c1, pinning the rook. This is another key variation. So yeah, in the final position, it's like hopeless. It's really hopeless. Staggering. Okay, I hope there's some lessons there. Great game from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.